we are living in a time where the economy and it kind of decentralized men, which is, I guess, in a sense, you can say, okay, well, we propped women up and we made space for them, but we did that at the expense of the men. And you can make a credible case for that. Let's just say, what do you mean at the expense of the men? Well, you don't champion anything men say. You shame men into submission for everything they think and believe. You're going to get this type of isolation from men where they're just going to have to withdraw from society because they're being caged, right? Say something and be canceled, right? So we went through all of these movements sequentially, right? We went through social justice and all men are bad. Then we went through Me Too and people calling you a rapist just for not saying nothing. So I mean, right now it's a lot of men just are dumbfounded. Like, I don't know what to do. There is nothing else they can do except withdraw because any move they make could possibly get them fired. Will have people thinking something about them that's not true. So yeah, it's multidimensional, but I'm ready to get into the topic. It's a good topic.
Y'all think young men are struggling?
Yeah,
I do.
absolutely.
Okay.
When you say male loneliness epidemic, are we speaking about like they're feeling like they're lonely because they don't have as many qualitative experience with women? Or are we stepping outside of women and saying like men are isolating themselves more and they don't have lack of deep connections with each other as men? And so that's like those are two different loneliness. Which one are we focusing on? Are we focusing on both or
Yeah, we're talking about women and everything that surrounds
okay.
a marriage, all that stuff. They just by themselves. It used to be a time where women were choosing themselves, and now it seems like it's a lot of men choosing themselves now. Seems to be peaceful on that side, but okay. Ty, you said they're not struggling. Why is that, in your opinion?
I wanted to understand the context of what the loneliness entails because
Hmm.
men have plenty access to women and men are, you know, having sex and hooking up with women every day. So
Hmm.
the loneliness there, I don't necessarily see it. But as far as like long term relationships, that might be different. But I feel like you stated, they're choosing to be lonely.
Hmm. Are they choosing? Okay, so it's a personal choice. It's not that they can; it's that they're choosing to. Okay, you shaking your head. Nah, you on the fence about it? Go ahead, Miss Pearl.
I mean I that depends. That's why I asked like are we looking quantifiably because there are a lot of women that men could be with, vice versa. Can be with a lot of men as well, but that doesn't mean that we're having, like I said, the qualitative experiences. So they can sleep with a lot of women and still feel drained, still not feel like they're connected, still feel lonely, and physically have somebody that's right next to them. That's why I was just trying to contextually understand, like, are we speaking revolving around women loneliness, quantifiable versus qualitative, or are we speaking about men isolating themselves and, like I said, not having a deep connection and the brotherhood because that's another level of loneliness. So again, I disagree. I think they have a lot of women. They're gonna always have a lot of access to women, but they're not gonna have as many qualitative experiences.
Hmm. Okay, yeah, I can understand that. Go ahead, Sweeney. What you think, man? You think young men are struggling right now?
Um, I would say that it's probably a combination of both that men are choosing opt well, if we're talking specifically about their encounters with the opposite sex, I would say that they're choosing to opt out of dating earlier now. They're less interested in it. But also there is a level of loneliness, but I think you can attribute that to a number of things from the distancing with social media. I think COVID played a huge part in that. And then yeah, just people kind of not, you know what I mean, not socializing as much as they used to as far as interpersonal communication and being amongst each other and around each other. Instead is more online and things like that. So I would argue that, yeah, I would say that people in general are a little more lonely now than they once were. But they said that young men do have higher rates of reported loneliness than anybody else.
I think y'all, because I talked to a few men and they have conversations with guys that they coach and just on a reality base and not internet base. They say a lot of men are really struggling with women. and then they are lonely. So I think it is some truth to it. I think we're being misled a lot of times looking at the internet because it's not telling the whole truth. What you got on this trigger, Mike? I heard you said it. The men are struggling. Why you think so?
Yeah, I mean it's someone said it's multidimensional, so it's not just one reason, right? But I've heard Miss Pearl says a bit of it. Sweeney definitely said a bit of it. There's also like a culture thing, and and it's just use the states. We all live in America, right? We are living in a time where the economy and it kind of decentralized men, which is, I guess, in a sense, you can say, okay, well, we prop women up and we made space for them, but we did that at the expense of the men. And you can make a credible case for that. Let's just say, what do you mean at the expense of the men? Well, you don't champion anything men say. You shame men into submission for everything they think and believe. You're going to get this type of isolation from men where they're just going to have to withdraw from society because they're being caged, right? Say something and be canceled, right? So we went through all of these movements sequentially, right? We went through social justice and all men are bad. Then we went through Me Too and people calling you a rapist just for not saying nothing. So I mean, right now it's a lot of men just are dumbfounded. Like I don't know what to do. There is nothing else they can do except withdraw because any move they make could possibly get them fired. Will have people thinking something about them that's not true. So yeah, it's multidimensional, but I'm ready to get into the topic. It's a good topic.
I think everybody kind of touched on it. It is through advancement in technology, you're going to see people moving about the world differently. So at one time, I think most men just kind of had slots in life where they knew what they had to do. Like they had to get a job. Eventually, they were going to get a wife, 2.5 kids, what the heck ever. And that was their life. Now we're exploring a multitude of alternative lifestyles. And I don't mean in the rainbow type of way, but you never heard men talk about their feelings or vulnerability 30 years ago, 40 years ago. There was no space for it. So I think just with everything everyone's saying technologically, through the advancement of women and propping them up, which is totally fine, that men are starting to now have time, even though there's more distraction and entertainment, but they're now starting to have more time to think about how they feel. And I think when you really look to your left and look to your right, you start to realize we've probably always been alone, but you had a certain level of distraction. Now you're still in that same lifestyle, but we socialize different online like this, and so on. So.
I think one thing that we honestly do more often than we should is kind of just relate to this anecdotally. If we look at ourselves or even sometimes our immediate circles, sometimes we could have an idea of what the world is like and what men are feeling like and everything else. But sometimes it's a lot worse when you start digging into the numbers, or depending on what it is that you do for a living. If you consult some of these men, then yeah, you'll realize it's a lot worse than we wish it was. So men in particular, as far as being lonely in general, it's up about 5% over the last 10 years, which is not too crazy. But if we're talking about men as far as having a female companion is concerned, if you look at Pew Research, they're talking about 63% of us are single compared to 34% of women, right? So most women are not single while we have a grave disparity of it. And another thing that you have to pay attention to is where those numbers are coming from. One of the main reasons why there's so many more men single than women is because there's the age gap, because we're talking about men under 30, whereas women have access to men. And secondly, a lot of the females are Eskimo sisters. They are dating the same men. So most of the men that women are paying attention to, who they're interested in, they realize that they have options. So for the men that you like, yeah, a lot of them aren't single. You probably won't think that men are lonely in general, but most of the men that are overlooked on a regular basis are absolutely extremely lowly. And you can tell psychologically. You can tell if you look at deletion rates, just the mental state of men, unfortunately, and it's something that men are usually ignored, and it's never brought to anyone's attention. There are no particular support groups for men like there are for women. We just don't give a damn in real life. That's what it is. It's under our radar, and it's something that most of us, sometimes even men doing well, never pay attention to.
Like somebody just said, it's hard to see it because you can only go by the people around you, right? But I do see I have heard, some people say who are a lot brighter, who studied this area, say that men are lonely. And I can see that doing what I do, I can see maybe the ones who may be lonely when they get a little older. I can see it probably coming, you know. So it's interesting for Trev. I do have a question for him because one of the things he stated, there aren't enough places to go get assistance for these young men. Who do you think should put those things together? Because what I find is a lot of women are trying to help young men and it's not working. Like these moms are doing it and it's just making the situation worse. It's not helping the situation. They're just enabling. And it's just not, working.
If you want me to answer it, yeah. If we're being honest, it should be something that men do, right? Those of us who are doing better should be able. It's nobody who can understand us as much. It's not something we should rely on women for, to be honest. So yeah, that's us as men to take that responsibility and care about each other because no one else will, right? We generally don't get empathy from women anyway, which we're not.
I think we do. You get caught. I think it looks different. I don't think you get the help that you necessarily need. I think
when I say empathy, right? It's not something that it's your fault that you can't give us. It's because you're not a man. You can't give it to us when we're talking about empathy. So that's why I say specifically men.
Shan, let me say this. Hey, Shan, long time. That's one facet, right? But I don't want to get too deep into it because I think JR said he's going to play a clip. But as I think more and more about this, I look at how the narrative that people have created around the male loneliness epidemic. And like I said before, it is multidimensional, but it's also developmental. And most men and women have deprived themselves of the certain types of relationships they were supposed to form early in their 20s. And that's why the men are struggling. I'm going to tell you flat out right now, everybody, like we have it completely wrong. Can we just admit that? People, especially in this community, in our community, they keep saying, you got to have it all together before you start a family. That's BS. That's BS. This is what is a factor causing the male loneliness epidemic. My viewpoint is that most men will not have a purpose or drive without a family. Now, then look at what a family entails. Building a family, and then let's say my wife, has a bunch of sisters. And unfortunately, on the dad's side, they're married, but on the mom's side, where she has more sisters, none of them are married. Now, think about this. Aren't their husbands supposed to be my natural friends? Aren't our kids supposed to play together? Aren't these men I'm supposed to trust to keep my kids? We are deprived of the natural bonds and relationships that we're supposed to be forming within the family and community. So when we don't, so think about it this way, the people or the culture or community that fails to create families will suffer the most from this male loneliness epidemic that we're talking about.
Their older male counterparts are keeping them that way because they keep selling them this fantasy of how women are supposed to be and how men are supposed to be in this old world definition of relationships, not taking into account that they do not have the same economic opportunities as they used to. Like even my generation, even when we were younger, they still don't have the same economic opportunities. So yeah, I think that it's their older male counterparts, but they're definitely struggling right now.